Alrighty, second episode of the day to officially get us caught up. So this is now day 2 of week 8. So we're in Exodus chapter 3. We're going to read all the way from 3:1 down to chapter 4 verses 20. This is basically this is one story, I guess you could say. It's all one story, but this is one story within the story. This is the story of Moses at the burning bush. So just to kind of give a recap of what happens, you have Moses, who's a Hebrew boy. So he is born into slavery in Egypt. At this particular time, because the Israelites were growing so much, there were so many of them that were being born, Pharaoh was trying to stamp that out. So he was ordering that all the baby boys be killed. So to save him, his parents put him in a basket and put him in the river. Odds are not high that you survive that way as a little baby. But providentially, in God's care, God allowed Pharaoh's daughter to find him. She thought that he was beautiful, and so she sort of adopts him as her own child. So Moses grows up in the Pharaoh's palace. Now, if you watch the movies like The Prince of Egypt or a movie about Moses in general, they almost always portray Moses as not knowing that he was a Hebrew, not knowing that he was an Israelite, thinking that he's an Egyptian. And that is not true. He did know that he was a Hebrew all along. In fact, he really seemed to care for his relatives who were in slavery. In fact, he was out watching them one day, and he saw this Egyptian man, as a slave master, basically, beating one of the Israelite slaves. And he was so enraged by that, not really having anything else to do about it, he waited for an opportune time and he killed that Egyptian. Well, when he killed that Egyptian, some Hebrew guys saw that. And later on, he saw those two guys fighting, and he said, well, wait, why are y'all fighting each other? He said, well, and they say, well, who made you a judge over us? Are you going to kill us like you killed that guy? And so realizing that people had seen what had happened, he was afraid for his life. And sure enough, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, found out about it, and Pharaoh tried to kill Moses. So Moses has to flee, and he goes into a land called Midian, and in Midian things go pretty well for him. He gets a wife and kids, and he gets to be the hero, and things are great over there for him. But then he meets God in the burning bush, and they have this conversation where God is trying to get Moses to go back to Egypt to set his people free. And Moses offers excuse after excuse after excuse not to go back. And so God keeps coming back and saying, well, I'll give you this sign reform. I'll tell you this. I'll do that. I'll do that. And finally, we get to this last little part. I just want to read the very end of it. Again, read it for yourself. But this is what happens towards the end. It says, but Moses replied to the Lord, Lord, I have never been eloquent, either in the past or recently, since you have been speaking to your servant, because my mouth and my tongue are sluggish. So basically, Moses probably has a stutter or some kind of speech impediment. He can't talk very well. So since he can't talk very well, he's like, well, I can't go back and talk to Pharaoh or I can't do that. I can't talk well. The Lord said to him, who placed a mouth in humans? Who makes a person mute or deaf, seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak, and I will teach you what to say. Verse 13. After all of his other excuses are gone, this is what Moses says. Moses said, please, Lord, send someone else. It's just like he has nothing else left to say. He has no excuses left to offer. Just God, just get somebody who's not me to do this. Just not me. Anybody. Please don't send me back. And I think that it's worth thinking about why Moses didn't want to go back. He obviously, one, he's not confident in his ability to speak, but think about the experiences that he has. He grows up as a Hebrew in an Egyptian home. These are two different ethnicities, just so you know. You have Hebrews, which are Israelites. You have Egyptians. These are two nationalities. The Hebrews are slaves to the Egyptians. He is the child of a slave, but he grows up like an Egyptian. He grows up in the slave owner's house. He grows up in the king's house, actually, of all places, and enjoys the benefits. He has his own freedom and all this sort of thing. And so he's sort of out of place. And it seems like the Egyptians were good to him for a while. But when they found out that he had killed another Egyptian, that he had stuck up for his people, they don't want him anymore. Now, Pharaoh can kill and enslave whoever he wants to, but as soon as Moses does it, it's a problem. He's going to kill him and get him back to him, because all that he is to them is a Hebrew. They might have been nice to him and all that sort of stuff, but at the end of the day, That's all he is to them. He's a Hebrew. He's nothing. He's a slave. That's what he is in their eyes. To the Hebrews, though, they don't want him either because they think that he's all high and mighty. They think that he thinks that he's better than them, and they don't want to have anything to do with that. He's sort of, in a sense, almost like a sellout, somebody that's living with the enemy and all this sort of thing. So they don't want him either. And so Moses is in this weird place where neither group wants him. He tries to be a hero. He tries to help them out, and he winds up in danger, of death, of being killed, and has to flee away from them. Nobody wanted him. And so when he goes to this land, things are going well for him. He actually has a good life, it seems. And he doesn't want to go back. He doesn't want to have to deal with those people. He doesn't want to have to risk it again, because what God is asking him to do is not only just challenging, but he has to think about the people that he dealt with back there. It's a scary thing, and he has every reason to not want to go back. And the same thing can happen to us. We can have bad experiences. We can wind up jaded and hurt because of the things that have happened to us. And our pain can start to color the way that we live, so that when God tells us to go do something, we don't want to do it because we don't want to risk getting hurt again. But we have to realize that when we are obedient to God, he gives us the strength. He gives us the power to do what he is asking us to do. We have to trust God and obey him, even when our pain tells us not to trust him. We have to trust God rather than the pain that we've been through. Because little did Moses know that through everything that had been happening, through all the pain that he'd been through, God was setting him up to be the deliverer. And so maybe the same thing is happening in your life. Maybe you've been through a lot and it feels like, man, I don't want to obey God because that's just going to get me in more trouble. It's just going to cause more hurt. But you don't know that maybe the reason God allowed you to go through the things that you've been through is so that he can make you a deliverer for somebody else. So be obedient to God and trust him rather than your pain.